Good evening. Smart Trucking Live coming at you from the woods in northern Ontario. How's everybody doing tonight? Shannon in Wyoming, how are you? Michael, Charlotte, North Carolina, good to hear from you. Ralph, good afternoon from Southern California. I bet you it's nice there. Adam, Panama City, Florida. Howdy everyone from Ursel. Avery Sr., hey from Ottawa. Better you than me, Avery. Just the politics there drive me crazy. How's everybody doing tonight?
Yeah, Michael Mueller. Dave, fix your own truck instead of sitting around eating DQ burgers, and Cal has to fix the paint.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's the only work I ever get out of her. You just caught me at a bad time there. I might have been having a bit of a nap, Michael, but
after a sandwich.
After a sandwich. Did you get your new truck yet? I think you were scheduled to get a new 389. Let us know if you got that anyway. Austin from Arizona with Swift, I guess. What's going on? Shannon's doing great. Hey, you're from Fargo, North Dakota. Paid by the hour from Benjamin. It's the best way. Benjamin, I agree, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
How so?
It's paid by the mile was not a bad system in its day. It's just become outdated. And part of the reason it's become outdated is because we never really had a whole lot of downtime back in the day. You went from point A to point B. There weren't really any appointments. They just kind of got you there when you got there, they unloaded you. And there was no sitting around. And if you had an appointment, you got there early, they didn't care. They just take you. It was one less they had to do later in the day or the next day or whatever. But we never experienced the waiting time back then that we do now. And the traffic, certainly, back then wasn't in the same league as it is now. So by the mile, back in the day, wasn't a bad way to go. Now, you got to bear in mind, too, that every year, everybody would get a raise, an annual mileage raise. And, it'd be a couple cents a mile usually. But that was an annual thing, and it kept up with the cost of living. Well, they don't do that anymore. The traffic is horrendous these days. Everything is by appointment now, and these monster warehouses stick hard to their appointments. And if you miss one, if you get caught in bad weather and miss your appointment, you can be there a couple of days. It's just not the same system that it was. So it's time that trucking grew out of the dark ages and got rid of this by the mile pay system. Now, the carriers don't ever want to talk about this, but it's creating all sorts of troubles too, because it's been a big part of the reason that's brought on the driver shortage, because guys are losing so much time in traffic and so much time at customers that they're just blowing their week, and the hours are so restricted now. Their hours are so restricted, they're just not making a decent living, and guys are leaving the industry. Now, to get the big carriers to admit this, it's virtually impossible. But everybody knows it's the truth. That's the problem here. If they paid everybody by the hour, it would be a fair system. That way, if you got stuck in traffic going through Chicago or something like that, you were still getting paid. Now, the big carriers don't ever want to talk about this because it would cost them more money. Because right now, they get a lot of your time for free, and they love that. It saves them money. A few years ago, a news reporter asked Derek Leathers, the CEO of Werner's, if he'd ever considered paying his drivers by the hour. And his response was, and I'll never forget this, his response was, it was a short consideration to be sure, which means he thought about it for about 5.5 seconds and dismissed it. As soon as he did the math in his head, realized he'd be losing money. And that was the end of that decision right there. And the carriers will whine and scream and cry about the driver shortage, but they're not truly prepared to fix it. And the best way to fix it would be to pay everyone fairly, and that would be by the hour. So it's the biggest issue in the trucking industry today, and it's creating all sorts of problems, like the driver shortage probably being the best example of that. But I was reading in one of the trade magazines today that they've come out with the list of the 100 biggest truck bottlenecks in the nation, and leading the parade, number one was going down to the George Washington Bridge. And pretty much everybody could guess that. But there's 99 other bottlenecks, major bottlenecks, in the queue. And you don't even have to think too hard about it. You know where they are. Every major city in the U.S. has a traffic bottleneck now. And you can't think of one that doesn't. From Atlanta to D.C. to Chicago, everywhere you go. And that's where the majority of the freight goes, in and out of these major centers. So every time you transit an area like that, you're losing money because you're losing time. And there's got to be a way to solve this problem. The way is pay the guys by the hour, and that's what we should be doing. And the carriers are just going to have to come to this point and accept that, or continue to lose drivers. Because why work 70 hours a week and get paid for 40 when you can work 40 hours a week, get paid for 40, and be home every night? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. So they're gonna have to have a come to Jesus meeting and fix the problem. Simple as that. Now, some carriers, the better carriers, will pay you by the hour when you land, like at a customer or something like that. And it's better than sitting there for free, certainly. If most mileage rates, though, they figure that you're calculating out about 65 miles an hour. But who averages 65 miles an hour throughout the day? You might if you're in Nebraska or Wyoming on I-80. But other than that, you're always below that, especially if you're on secondary highways, going through towns or something like that, and you're just not pulling in the dough that you used to, because of this mileage rate system has not increased. It's still too low, and the delays are just too long. Yes, Nick. Master Waff, Austin is horrible. Yes, it is. Yeah. By the hour will turn into a minimum wage job. I do good by the mile. Well, it's not going to turn into a minimum wage job if you accept the job and take it for cheap. If you want to work for cheap, I guess that's up to you. But nobody in their right mind will take a minimum wage job. So that's up to you what you decide you're worth to get paid. But minimum wage for managing a tractor trailer through the rough weather and all this, all times of the year and the traffic, there's a lot of responsibility there. Anyone that's willing to do that for minimum wage is half crazy. So no, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Michael Mueller, Smith calculates it at 55. Well, at least that's a more realistic calculation anyway. At least that's something. I'd be curious, Michael, do they pay you by the drop or by the pick when you stop, or how does that work with those guys? Smith's a really good carrier, so I imagine they've got a good system going. But yeah, it's and especially the mega carriers. The mega carriers are just known for saving money that way.
There's a good question. T.J. Jones, the Bull of the Woods. What about a fair, guaranteed salary? What are your thoughts?
Well, if you could trust the carrier to be fair with you, what usually happens with a salary system is you'll start out agreeing to this many dollars for this many hours, and then slowly but surely the company will push more and more and more on you, more time, more responsibility, more chores, but not up the salary. And they do this with white collar workers all the time. They just dump more and more on them as time goes on. So you end up working for less and less, but for the same money for more time. So no, I still think by the hours is the best way to go. Like a salary is good if you've got an honest company that you're working for, but all sorts of them try to squeeze their people for every red dime they can get out of them. So by the hour, it's easy to track. You know exactly how much time you've done, and you know exactly how much they owe you. Look at your paycheck, match it to your hours. It's simple to calculate out for drivers too. So, and it's by the mile. This by the mile system. There's always an argument over how many miles you drove, and they'll short the miles and then pay you the short miles, and that would eliminate that problem too. And that's probably the biggest scam in this industry, is they cheat you on the miles and then pay you less. By the hour, they couldn't do that. It's just a more fair way to pay drivers. So I would be hunting out companies that are paying that way.
Adam has a question. What are your thoughts on percentage pay?
Again, percentage pay, you're relying on how honest the carrier is with you. And I don't like to put anything to question. Like some of them will quote you accurate percentage rates, but all sorts of them won't. And they never want to show you the freight bills, the original freight bills. I've known carriers that'll doctor freight bills to show the amount that they're really getting paid in case they ever get questioned and they have to present them in court or something. They'll alter the documents. So by the mile is just the most fair way to go, because they just can't mess with that system. They can't twist it around and use it to their advantage. How does a company make profits if they pay you by the hour if you're an over-the-road driver? Well, it's pretty simple. The company just has to raise their freight rates to make sure they can compensate everybody fairly. It's just...
And that's their problem. That's not your problem.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's not for you to worry about.
You don't get paid to figure that out.
Yeah, that's what they get paid for. Your job is to make sure that you're making a decent wage. And how they manage it, that's their issue.
Here's a good comment from C. Holland from Colorado. I parked my truck, sold my step deck and reefer, as well as my bull rack. I'm running a belly dump for $25 an hour. And I'm getting around 1.5 every 2 weeks. Good for you.
Yeah, that's the way more and more guys are going these days. That's frankly the way I've gone. Just because it's a fair system. It's easy to track. They can't mess with you. It's just a clean, simple system. Why mess with an outdated system? All they have to do is just update. It's easy to do. And if they've got to increase their rates, they got to increase their rates to compensate it. Pretty simple stuff. They're hauling it for too cheap anyway then, probably, if they got to adjust their rates.
Ed Powers, I make $125 a day plus 27 cents a mile. That's very nice.
Yep, nothing wrong with that. And there are all sorts of outfits out there paying guys fairly.
And Fred's comment also, with the ELDs now you can be paid accurately by the hour.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Because there's no arguing it. You match it up with the ELD. They can see how many hours you've worked. It goes right to their computer in the office. So what could be more simple? What could be more fair?
Crazy Ryan, I make $285 a day at Crete.
Yeah, not too shabby at all.
Wow.
Not too shabby at all. That's the kind of outfits everybody should be working for.
Now, I think, though, he's saying they pay zip to zip. But still, that's good.
As long as the pay works out.
Yeah.
As long as the pay works out.
And with some companies, by the mile is okay, but generally speaking, it is an outdated, antiquated system.
That's right. And some carriers are really good by the mile. It's just there are so many of them that aren't.
Cale Burgess, I work for a company that pays percentage. I see all of my confirmation sheets for my loads, and on every sheet, I get to see what the rate of pay is for that load. So by saying that, can you trust a company like this?
Well, as long as they're not altering the documents before you see them, and you have no way of knowing whether they are or not. There's no way to tell.
Jess Clayton, I work for Purolator, and we make $31.49 an hour in Toronto, and we are also union.
Yeah, that's a decent wage. That's where everybody should be. That's a decent wage. What companies pay by the hour? From Eric. All sorts of them these days. It's up to you to search them out in your area. If construction companies running their dump trucks, almost all of those guys pay by the hour. Lumber yards, like where I work, all by the hour. There's all sorts of it. Not too much over the road stuff by the hour, but that's where you've got to move if you need to move, because it's just not worth your while.
Vladimir asks, can you ask a company how they break down their pay during an interview? Absolutely,
Absolutely.
you can.
It should be one of the first questions you ask. That's why you're there. That's the most important thing to you. You're not there to give them warm fuzzies. You're there to make a decent salary for your family. You bet. Ask them whatever you need to ask them. Don't be shy. And if they hum and haw and hesitate, it's the wrong outfit. Michael Mueller, I get around 3K to 38 a week at 48 cents. Yeah, you're doing just fine there, Michael. But Smith's a good outfit. They've been around a long time.
Rob Blackwood, I'm making just over $300 a day with HST, 60 cents a kilometer. My lane is Mississauga to South Texas. I have to admit, it's more than running local.
Well, that sounds like a nice deal, though. That sounds like decent money. Here's Daniel Meredith. I am a Swift driver, and he only gets 41 cents a mile. And that's probably better money for Swift than some of those guys there are making. But
I work for a company that pays overtime after 12 hours. Usually overtime is paid after 8 hours, but not sure why my company does that.
well, because they're getting away with it. You're right. It usually pays after 8 hours. Or after 40 hours a week. Some companies figure it out differently.
And they figure it out differently, and what they won't do is pay you overtime for it. What they want to do is, this expression is, bank the hours.
Oh, and a lot of outfits try to do that, and that's not even legal unless they have your permission to pay you that way. And who's going to do that? Nobody. They want the overtime money, not it banked. But you've got to take them to task. The carriers, so many of them are just a little bit crooked. It's how they make their money. That's why they can drive the freight rates low, is because they're making so much off their employees on these different tricks like mileage rate pay that they can pad their wallets that way.
Someone has commented that you get paid by the mile, yet loading and unloading is paid by the hour. Layovers, breakdowns, and resets on the road are paid.
Well, that's good to get resets paid. Not everyone's doing that. But if you're on the ELD, you're working by the hour. So if you're working by the hour, why not get paid by the hour? It's the most logical way to go about it. And that way you get paid for all your time. There's no freebies. What's the phrase that drives us nuts there? Industry standard. This industry standard where you give the customer 2 hours, the first 2 hours for free. Like, what the hell is that? Give them 2 hours for free of your time. The carrier's giving them 2 hours of your time for free.
Next Gen makes a comment. We get $187.50 for a reset.
That's okay. At least they're paying you something. At least they're paying something. That's a gesture in the right direction. So that's good. That's good. All sorts of guys get nothing. So that's a good deal.
Jesse Clayton, we also get paid overtime after 45 hours per week.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. All sorts of guys do it by the number of hours in the week, and that's a fair system too.
Peter S., I get paid 50 cents a mile and $100 for drops and picks and nothing else. That's good wage for drops and picks.
Yeah, and here's King Crusher at Crete, 52 cents per mile. Nothing wrong with that at all these days. That's up where it should be.
Someone has commented that it's helpful when others are sharing their income. Yes, it is helpful. You can be helpful to each other.
Here's Harold in Hollywood. In California, anything over 8 hours is overtime by law. And that's the way it should be. And that's part of what this big fight over AB5 down there is about, is to make sure that everybody is paid overtime after the 8 hours. And they're paid, if they put in 8 hours, they get paid for 8 hours. And that's what the big fight is about out there. And that's why the carriers don't want to pay it.
Troll of YouTube says, I have never been compensated for a reset away from home. You and many others.
Yeah, there are a couple ways to fight that. You just need to tell them, well, that's fine. If you're not going to pay me to be out, Just make sure I'm back at the terminal when it's reset time.
But they won't do that.
And if they can't do that, find another carrier and tell them why. Your time is valuable. It's worth money. You work hard enough every week as it is without giving them some of your weekend for free time. That's crazy. It costs you money. You got to eat out there in the truck stops.
Native Pride asks, so if I don't get paid for my on-duty hours, is that considered modern-day slavery?
Yes. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. You're not at work because you want to help them out. You're at work to get paid. You need to be paid for your time that you're donating to them. You're working for them. You should be paid. Simple. But
they expect drivers to sit for nothing. It costs you money to sit.
Yeah, they and more and more carriers are realizing as this driver shortage grows and grows and grows that people just aren't prepared to put up with it anymore. The cost of living is too high. The cost of groceries, insurance, everything is too high. You've got all these bills to pay. So there's no point in going to work and doing any of your stuff for free at work.
Shank makes a comment here, and I had to chuckle when I read it. A lot of drivers lie about their pay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
So make sure when you're investigating a company that you check it out and get some confirmation what they're paying. Don't always believe everything that you hear.
They should have a pay package in writing. Make sure you get a copy of that so you know.
Most of them won't submit in writing, though.
They don't want to do it, but
because then they can be their feet held to the fire.
Yeah. Yep. So they're all sorts of dirty tricks, but
great comment, Greg Maxwell. No road trucking pays by the hour.
There you are. And there are other carriers who Dupree Logistics, I read, pays by the hour as an example. Excellent company. So there are carriers out there paying that. You've just got to seek them out, because why donate your time for free? It's crazy. Why help finance a Mercedes for the upper management with your free time?
That's right.
Detention pay should be mandatory by law. Harold in Hollywood. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And you're lucky to live in California, where you've got your state behind you, fighting for that, backing you. And there are 9 other states now that are getting on board with that same type of thing. New Jersey announced the other day, for instance, that they're in favor of that. It's a good thing. Why get taken advantage of?
Native Pride has a comment. They created that shortage.
That's exactly right. They did create the shortage. And they whine and cry, and they just can't understand what's going on. And their favorite excuse is, well, the driver's age is increasing and they're starting to retire. Well, that was never a problem before, because the drivers' kids would start driving the trucks, and people would want to get into trucking. But now nobody wants to get into trucking to replace the older guys, because it just doesn't pay enough. But you won't hear them admit to that.
Native Pride has another comment. I miss my paper log freedom.
Yeah, it's you could kind of manipulate the paper log system and sometimes make a little better money at the deal, but those days are gone. And that's another reason these big carriers have to come to the party on this proper pay system. You just can't cheat anymore.
Jay the Truth makes a comment. I bring home $1,200 per week as a local driver, 5 days per week, 6 to 8 hour days on average, benefits and 401k, auto mechanic on the side. Can't complain, life is comfortable.
You can't beat that. You can't beat a deal like that. Why be stuck 1,000 miles from home for free when you can have a deal like that right in your backyard and be home, More and more guys are figuring this out. The glory days of trucking are gone anymore. It's just another job. So
well, but that doesn't mean that a trucking job still can't be a good job.
No, and there's still good jobs out there. Don't get me wrong. You work for these private fleets and something like that. You can have the freedom of the road, still get to drive a nice truck, and still make really good money. And all sorts of guys out there are still doing that. but not with these big mega carriers anymore. These mega carriers have trimmed it down to your operating on your last cent. And that's not the way to go. You're going to be working for 40 years, some of you guys. So why not make the best money you can possibly make? Because sooner or later, you're going to want to be able to retire. You're going to need to be able to retire. And you've got to have money in the bank to do that. So you've got to start working on this stuff now.
Here's an insightful comment by Adrian Janssens. I learned that a driver's time is not worth a cent, only the miles he drives.
Well, see, that's the
mindset.
That's the mindset, but that's what you've got to get out of. The carrier can tell you that's the way it is, but you don't need to accept that. You shouldn't accept that.
Good point, Michael Mueller. We only get paid the way we get paid because we let them.
That's exactly it. Exactly it. Because we've allowed it. We've allowed it, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop. So that's why a lot of guys, rather than fight anymore, are just getting out of the industry, and that's part of the driver shortage problem. But yeah, you just can't put up with it. If they make you like a by the mile offer, say, well, there's a guy down the street paying by the hour. I'm going to go down there. Thanks for your time. Simple as that. Yeah, that's right. We only get paid the way we get paid because we let them. Yeah, exactly right. Next gen, I pull tanker with a 389 and the 6NZ Cat. Respect and great home time. You got a good job working for you there then. Yeah, I tell people all the time. Here's a good comment from Austin. I tell people all the time, how much are you worth? Yeah, you're worth something. Your time is worth something. Your experience level is worth something.
Many trucking companies will count on drivers to have a particular mindset, and a lot of them bank on the fact that drivers think in a certain way. So if you're going to feed them, then they're more likely to take advantage of you.
Yeah, you just can't allow yourself to be taken advantage of anymore. You can't afford these days, the way things are, to be taken advantage of. It's simple math.
Peter S., driving truck for a living is a hard job. Yes, it is.
It is a hard job, and that's why I'm all about the pay. You should be compensated fairly for that job. It is a hard job. It's a hard life. It's hard on you. It's hard on your family. It should be well compensated. Be sure that you are. That's my point here.
Just a point from K10or11. A lot of heavy haul outfits pay very well.
Yes, heavy haul for the most part is still a good niche market to work. Some of those guys make pretty serious money, and some of those guys can't run after dark or before the sun comes up or stuff like that, but they're still compensated for their time because they got to sit because that's the law. So yeah, some of those guys are doing just fine. I never had the nerve to do it myself, but some guys make good money at it.
Riley asks, I am going to start CDL school after high school. Any advice for me, Dave?
Well, if you're young and single and you want to see the world, go over the road for a little while.
How about North America?
If you want to see North America, go over the road for a couple years to get it out of your system and get some experience. But if you're going to have a wife and kids and a family and the house and the dog and the white picket fence and all that stuff, start looking around, rack in a little experience first, and start looking around for something closer to the home that pays by the hour. And you'll be glad that you did, especially the older you get, the more glad you'll be.
Comment from Benjamin. Trucking is hard on your health.
Trucking is very hard on your health, and there's something else that the pay no longer compensates for. It's very hard on your health.
Someone made a comment that the young fellow can't go interstate till he's 21, so it'll be a few years before he can cross the state line.
Yep, but you know what? That's not a bad thing. You'll probably make better money just sticking around running in your state. There's all sorts of good jobs like that, especially if you live in the Midwest or somewhere like that. Just go pull grain around the state of Nebraska. You couldn't ask for a better job.
Someone comments they started driving when they were 19 in state.
Yep, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And all sorts of kids that grow up in rural areas learn to drive on, the farm equipment and stuff like that. They've got their own trucks to haul their grain to the silos and the markets and stuff like that. Great way to learn.
IP Man comments, there's no driver shortage and there never has been. It's always been a retention shortage. The AMA has lied for decades to get cheap visa and cheap labor.
And that's all true. You notice when they release the statistics, there's no driver shortage in LTL or short haul or anything like that. It's all in over the road trucking. Lost my screen here. But yeah, the only shortage is over the road, and the only carriers that are experiencing it are the big mega carriers that just don't pay squat. Simple.
Okay.
So anyway, I strongly urge you guys to start shopping around. Your time is worth money. Start shopping around, especially if you're older. You don't want to get stuck over the road in your 50s and be working by the mile. So start shopping around, and you won't believe what it's like to go from an over-the-road job that was 14 hours a day and sometimes a little longer, because that's just the way things worked out. If you start working an 8-hour day and by the hour, when I started that, it was like being on vacation. I couldn't believe how much easier it was. I felt like I had a union job again. I just couldn't believe how much better it was. And I was a long time getting there. God, I could never go back to it now. Like, I loved over the road. I really did. But I've seen the country many times over. And at the end of 8 hours, I just want to go home. That's as simple as that. And I don't want to eat in the truck stops anymore. It's all fast food now. If I want to eat fast food, I can go to the end of town and pick up some there. But I'd rather eat at home too. It's just a more reasonable way to live. So if they're not going to pay you big money for being trapped in a truck for weeks at a time, you need to be paying or making decent money and stay home and live like a normal person instead of like an over-the-road driver. UPS starts off at $30 an hour. Not bad. If you join the union, health insurance is paid. UPS is a huge carrier, and I never hear anything bad about them. They're a great place to work. They treat their people fairly.
Comment, if you want good money and pay, you gotta go union.
Well, it is kind of that way these days. Sometimes they're hard to get into, but yeah, the union guys are still doing all right. Now, you don't need a union to be fairly paid, because all sorts of these company fleets pay pretty well too, and they'll treat you well. They want to keep their people. They don't want to have a turnover problem. So it's just as simple as that. But the mega carriers bank on the fact that they'll have 100% turnover constantly. So they just keep hiring guys and hiring guys and hiring guys, because they keep losing guys and losing guys and losing guys all at the same time. It's just a vicious cycle. But not all trucking companies operate that way. Get these union shops or these private fleets and run into guys that have been there 30 years and stuff like that. Those are the carriers that are doing it right.
Michael comments, Amazon supposedly pays their day cab drivers well.
Do they? Amazon's got some stuff going on right now. I'm not sure they have even decided how they're going to operate their fleets and their carriers and their associate carriers and stuff like that. They seem to be changing back and forth. They got rid of FedEx, and they brought them back. Then they got rid of UPS, and then they brought them back. So I'd wait a little while to see how it all pans out.
Someone comments, good luck at getting hired at UPS.
Sometimes you got to be persistent, but you'll get there. What do you guys think of Western Express? Terrible company. Anything else I can tell you? No, they have bad reputation for years.
Michael Mueller, that's how the mega carriers keep cheap labor, because the newbies don't know any better.
Yeah, and it's part of a thing. Sometimes as a new guy, you've got to go there because you need the training to get the license, And I understand that. And sometimes you just got to suck it up for a year until you get enough experience to move on. And I would have no problem with a guy learning at a mega carrier, because the first year you're there, you're going to bang stuff up anyway. So why not bang up one of Swift's trailers? They can afford to fix it. And it's a good learning curve for you. So by the time you've done your year with Swift or whoever, then you've got a better idea of where the truck is at all times. You're less likely to put a scrape in it. So you've learned on their dime. So I don't think that's a bad thing. But
Adrian Jansen's has a nice comment. Great show, folks. You are making me feel part of a community. If we were making you feel part of a community, then we've succeeded in what we're doing, because that's what we want.
Oh, that's nice of you to say.
Thank you for saying so.
Yeah, that is.
I hope others feel the same way.
That is one of our major goals here. I'm a retired truck driver, or semi-retired truck driver, and I miss.
He'll never completely retire.
I miss chatting with other truck drivers and seeing my friends on the road. So it all feels to me like it's part of a big family too. So thank you for saying so. I know I enjoy doing it. So.
Lady Trucker 43 said Swift is a great place to get experience.
Yes, and I agree. I agree, because carriers like Swift are so tuned to the fact that they're in training all the time. People are in training all the time. They don't get really upset. If you go to some carriers and you rip the side out of a trailer, they'll flip out at you. At Swift, it's just another day. they see it a few times a day, every day. So they're more tuned to new guys and the problems that they'll have. So yeah, training with a mega carrier, you won't get rich, but it's not a bad way to learn.
DCAS, thank you very much for the $4. Appreciate your support to the stream, my friend.
Thank you.
Somebody has a broken link for the Discord server, so we will get that fixed for you ASAP.
Dylan, laugh at semi-retired. Well, that's kind of what I am. I don't know. I just can't get away from the trucks altogether. I still enjoy it. It's an easy way to put in a day's work, I guess. And I enjoy chatting with the other drivers and the customers and stuff. So I still like it. After all these years, I still like it.
Harold comments that the mega carriers are a great place to get experience for about a year, but don't stay there.
Yeah, exactly right. Once you've got your time in, time to go. Time to look for someone that's paying you better. Time to look for somebody that's going to pay you more of what you're worth than the mega carrier as well. It's too bad that's the way they operate, but that is the way they operate.
HTC Trucking, I enjoy your videos. Even when I'm driving, I listen to your videos. Really enjoy them.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're going to be doing like a podcast thing that will be all sound, and that should make it even easier to listen to us.
And longer.
And longer. We'll see about that. Tough on me, but yeah. So stay tuned for that. It's coming.
Tough on me. We can't get you shut off.
I had my water in the garage. It's frozen solid. Marco, do I miss cab overs? Yes, I enjoyed the cab overs. I did. They could be cold as the dickens in the winter. That was the only part about them I didn't like, and you had to be careful getting in and out. But yeah, I liked the cab over. I drive for Trans Am, New Motivation. How do you like that? I hear some awful stories about Trans Am. So I'd be curious to know, New Motivation, I'd be curious to know how long you've been there and how they're treating you.
Hey, there's a great comment. Motorhead Maverick, your 18-speed how to shift video helped me to get hired on at a heavy haul gig.
Oh, well,
Hey.
Thank you for saying so. It's good to know how to drive one of those things. Here's in your bar. What do you think of trucking along the 401? I hate it. The 401's a nightmare anymore. I don't even want to go near it. But yeah, back to the 18-speed. I think everybody should know how to drive like a standard transmission truck. I know they're all going to automatics. I think that's a mistake, but that's the way they're going to go anyway. So. But yeah, if you get a chance to drive a standard still, I'd go for it all day long.
JTJNA, I'm a single male planning to go into trucking with no rent or no mortgage. Good idea.
Yeah, trucking really is designed for the single guys that, you don't even need to keep an apartment in the town where you live. You can just kind of stay wherever you land for the layover. It's not a bad life for a young single guy. It really isn't. But it's at some point most guys get the feeling they want to get married and establish, a home with children and stuff like that. And that's when trucking for most guys needs to change, so they can devote the time to the family rather than to the trucking company. And cats, yes. Yes, we got 3 cats.
So show some of your swag.
Well, GP Transco sent us over a bunch of stuff, and Kathy was just thrilled. Swag. So let me show you some of the stuff they sent over. It was like Christmas around here this morning when she opened the box up. But some of these hats, and this is a spinner thing. They sent us a really nice knapsack.
Oh.
Look,
at
she's got a pair of the socks on. Man, it's a good thing she washed her feet. There's even check this out. There's an umbrella in here, a little portable umbrella. I think that's really cool. So, and a flashlight, a really high-tech flashlight. So, see that? So thank you to those people at GP Transco that sent us this stuff. Kathy's been enjoying it all day long. That's for ice on your windshield. It's not for your armpits.
It's a back scratcher.
It's not a back scratcher, but check it out. Thanks for all the stuff there. We really appreciate it.
Adam Sorrell, thank you very much for the $5 donations. He says, keep up the great work and helping the trucking community, Dave.
Adam, thank you very much. Thank you.
Hey, someone has asked, are you a cat guy or Cummins?
I am a cat guy. I am a converted from a Cummins guy. I had Cummins for a long time, and I had an engine problem with one that I bought. It wasn't even a year old. I had a big fight with them over warranty, and I was so mad about it. The next truck I bought was a Cat, and I had no trouble with them, no trouble with any of them. And the Cat dealers all treated me very well. I was impressed with the service. Never a warranty argument. They had a longer warranty than Cummins. So I was more than impressed with Caterpillar, and I've been a Caterpillar guy ever since like 1990, I guess that would have been. I've been a Caterpillar guy ever since then. Great engine. I better not say this too loud in front of Kathy, but I'd be tempted to still be in trucking if they still put Cat motors in trucks, but they don't do that anymore. So that's part of the reason I had to retire. I couldn't get a Cat engine anymore, but I still got one. But no, great engines. Have you ever tried ice road trucking? One time, years ago, I took a trip with a friend of mine across Great Slave Lake in the wintertime, and I just decided it wasn't for me. Like, it paid really well back then, but I just wasn't comfortable with the concept. So I've tried it once. Once was plenty for me.
Troll of YouTube, thank you very much for the $3, my friend.
Yes, thank you, Troll.
I hope they bring Cat Power back.
Yeah, Caterpillar was smart enough to bow out over the emissions issue. They realized that engines need to breathe, not be recycled, and that's where all the emissions issues come from with these new engines, is recycling the exhaust. And Caterpillar looked at the science and said, we just don't think that's a good idea, and they bowed out of it. And I think they did the right thing. I was sorry, but sorry to see them go. But yeah, the technology, the science was flawed. They could mandate the thing run on chicken soup if they wanted to, but that doesn't mean the engineers can make it work properly. And look at the trouble now that we're still having with the DEF trucks, and never had any of those issues before. I hauled produce. It was time sensitive. You couldn't afford to have your reefer quit on you or your truck quit on you. You needed a reliable truck because the stuff had a trailer life of like 3.5 days. And you couldn't run a reefer on these new engines.
Take a quick minute and show them your t-shirt.
Oh, Yes, yes. I've got one of the new T-shirts on. We've got a few of those out and available. You want me to stand up?
Well, you have to show it on the.
I don't know if you can see it or not there, but there it is.
There it is.
It's one of the famous Lettuce King T-shirts. I don't know if the Lettuce King's watching or not tonight, but he'll be flattered if he is. Anyway, we've got those available. If you want to pick one up, please do. It helps our channel out. Native pride. I miss Cat. Yeah, me too.
Okay, a few more rapid fire questions and then we'll wrap it up.
Alrighty. Okay.
HTC Trucking say you so sexy, haha.
Better get your lens adjusted or your screen adjusted over there. So
Definitely
you had your
sure,
cat
right?
work on the cat. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, Michael Mueller. Yeah, that was a great engine. I put over that last one that you've seen the pictures of probably. I put over 1 million miles on that motor and never really had an issue with it. That's the one Kathy was working on the other day.
Batter Hamden, thank you very much for the $4.99. Appreciate the donation, my friend.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it's Bader. Swift.
I rebuild cat motors and they sell like crazy.
Yeah, there was a big trend here after the emissions trucks came out that everyone was buying new gliders and rebuilding cats and putting them in the gliders and that went for quite a while. But now the government pulls the trucks over and checks to see if the engines match the year and the emission standards are correct, and so we can't get away with that up here anymore. But it's good while it lasted anyway. Wasn't California supposed to do away with DEF? I don't know.
Okay, now that we're wrapping up at the end, we'd like to put it out there. Any suggestions for next week's live stream topic? What would you guys like to talk about next week? Any ideas, suggestions?
Yeah, we're open to anything you'd be interested in. I can always come up with something to talk about if you guys can't, but
The problem is getting them stopped talking.
Well, I asked for more help and participation from my crew here, but I guess they can't get a word in edgewise, so I guess that's my fault. Anyway, well, let us know. Let us know in the comments what you'd like to talk about next week, and we'll just dive right into it. In the meantime, what?
Tell them about Friday's video. Upcoming video release Friday?
Yeah, we've got a video coming out Friday. And I forget what the topic was. What was it? I hate it when they throw these trick questions at me. What's the topic on? Well, be sure to stay tuned. They're not going to give me a clue. Be sure to stay tuned anyway. We've got a video.
You were the guy that did the video.
Video coming out Friday. So, anyway, you guys take care. Keep the rubber side down, and we'll see you on the back. All stay safe.